What up, everybody? It's your boy Prez, aka @_Presidente on Twitter, and we're here to run through some video. We're here with another Strickland video overview. This time, we're going to focus on something that gets talked about a lot, but I don't know if people, when they're watching a game, have time to really dig into because things happen so fast, and that's screen defense. I want to talk a little bit about what it looks like when it's good, what it looks like when it's bad, who on the Knicks is annoyingly inconsistent. Spoiler alert, it's most players. We're going to look at particularly clips from the Wizards game and particularly clips of Evan Fournier, who is the main culprit in that game of really, really bad defense. Not just pick and roll defense, but defense in general. You know, he's been inconsistent this whole season on both ends and kind of a microcosm of the whole team. So I figured let's talk about him a little bit. And then we'll also look at some other guys around the league who are really talented at screen defense and see what good technique looks like with the help from some friends from YouTube. And then finally, we'll return to the Hawks game where the whole team, including Fournier, had much better screen defense. And yeah, we're just going to walk through some of that. So with that being said, let's get to it. This is a clip from the first quarter of the game versus the Wizards. Apologies for the, Motorola Razr level phone video quality. So I'm going to just hit play here. You see Fournier up here. You see Trez doing a high screen. You'll see a lot of that these days. This is end of the shot clock, so things are happening a little faster. Sorry, end of the quarter, so it's almost like transition, so which makes things a little bit harder. You see he gets hit by the Trez screen, and he's kind of out of the play completely. He's not really bothering Raul Neto. He's not really bothering Trez. So that leaves Taj trying to guard two people by himself, and that's a tough cover with somebody who's as gifted around the hoop as Trez. It's a foul. So that sort of thing from Fournier, sadly, is not super uncommon. We got a little bit of audio on some of these clips, so excuse the inconsistency. Let's look at what happens on this play. You see Fournier again right here on Trez again on a switch. Denny and Sims created that switch earlier in the possession. Pitch back to Neto. Burks is on him. Fournier has a soft switch / kind of screen. It's he doesn't get hit super hard by it, but it's there nonetheless. You see Taj dig. Fournier's here, and he stays more in the play than he did last time, but he swipes at it really annoyingly because that doesn't really do anything. You're not really going to bother him trying to swipe at a steal across his body from his left side. It's possible that he thought Sims was going to be at the rim. You know, he's used to having guys at the rim. That's what the Knicks defense does. They err on the side of having too much help near the rim often. And in that case, in theory, Sims would have rotated, and then Taj and Evan would have handled the Denny and Kuz on the weak side. But none of that happens. This is a wide open layup, and I know stuff like that. It just looks like a Fournier getting blown by, and it is because Fournier doesn't have the speed to get back in front of Neto, and that's where physical limitations come into play more so than effort on pick and roll defense. Is if you're not the fastest guy, you have to know how to technique-wise handle the play and impact the play from behind. Even athletic guys like Jrue Holiday, as we'll see later, get taken out of the play. So you got to know how to do it, how to handle it, how to impact the play regardless. Here, I stole some video from Zach Boisvert. Some may remember Coach Boisvert as one of the earliest voices on NBA Twitter and draft Twitter many, many moons ago. He has since entered into the league. I don't know what team he's working for these days, but he has a nice YouTube clip from 2016 talking about screen footwork. So I'm going to toss it to him and let him get into some of that.
The most common technique NBA point guards use to get through pick and rolls. Jordan's coverage call, the first thing that Paul does is get into the ball handler to give him a chance to get over the screen. The next thing to look at is George Hill's shoulder level as he fights through this screen. Look, even at 6'3", Hill is able to drop his shoulders to just about the hip level of the screener. thing I really want to focus on is the footwork many of these point guards use in fighting through screens. You see, rather than kicking their inside leg, the leg closest to the screen, over the screen, they instead take that top foot, so in this clip, Paul's left foot, and he moves it over the screen and runs through the pick, making sure to get skinny as to avoid contact with the screen.
All right, good stuff. So we learned from that, you bring the outside foot over, even though that seems counterintuitive, because the inside foot, you can use that to in theory get around, but it's much better if you use your outside foot to give you a straight angle to just run normally rather than shuffle sideways. You put your outside foot around, and then you try to get through it as quickly as possible by getting skinny. Here we have a couple of examples from some other guys around the league, like Mike Conley here on the Utah Jazz. Just watch what he does. You see right there, he pivots and gets his right foot. So he's basically parallel. And he also gets low. And you can also see he uses his hands, which is another thing that I don't think guys on the Knicks do a lot. You can get pretty physical getting around screens without straight ramming through guys. And that's really important to do. And now he's back with him. And then you see a good rear view contest, which is something that you have to do well because you're not always going to be in front of them or even on the side of them. So you have to stick your arm out and bother their shot, bother the passing lanes. Here's Conley again. And remember, Conley's little. He's 6 foot, maybe 180 pounds, and he's older. See his left foot here. That's what Coach Zach was talking about. Now he has a direct path to run normally rather than side shuffle. And you see him already putting his left hand on the ball handler and his right hand on the screen setter. You see him holding the screen setter, and his left hand is still jamming the ball handler on the hip. Of course, having Gobert here helps because that's going to make everybody else tentative. So allowing him to get back in front of Brunson. Tough shot, but still solid screen and roll defense. Here, I'm going to use a different YouTube video for reference. I don't know the name of the gentleman who made it, but his channel is called Undefeated Hoops, and he has tons of great technique and X's and O's videos. Here he has a series on Jrue Holiday's defense, or rather it's a series on different types of defense starring Jrue Holiday, who's good at all of them. This particular video was about screen defense, and he used Jrue Holiday as an example of what to do in different situations. In this particular piece that I took, it's what to do when the ball handler gets a step and gets an advantage, right? Because even the best screen navigators are going to get hit hard by some big dudes like KP or, other screeners. So what do you do here?
Gets a slight advantage right here. If the offensive player has a step, then you want to keep a touch right here so you can see his hands are reaching out. He's going to try to get a touch on Luka. And then you want to shoot the driving angle to try to beat the offensive player to the spot and get back square. Like he does there.
So Jrue is the perfect example of that. He's incredibly fast laterally, and the only other person who can do that on our team is Deuce. RJ is pretty fast laterally, but anyway, the point is you use your hands a lot and you use them intentionally. So, everything with screen defense starts with not being surprised by the screen and then planning what you're going to do with your footwork, with your hands, with the ball handler, with the roller. And you can tell a lot of guys on the Knicks don't really have a lot of reps executing those finer details, and they don't have the instincts to pull a lot of that stuff off. Although sometimes they do. A lot of these guys, even guys like Evan, are pros, and AB, who are pros, and they've been doing it for a long time. It's just a matter of consistency and execution. So here we're going to see another kind of issue that plagues the Knicks, which is, we've been focusing on the person defending the ball handler, Evan Fournier, but screen defense takes a bunch of guys, not just him. It takes Mitch, it takes Obi, it takes many guys. So I'll just run this. And so you see the pitch back, another high screen, another wide stance screen by Trez. Fournier gets hit pretty hard. Obi's here, Mitch is here, engaged on the play. If you're Mitch, you have to decide if you're going to commit to Raul, to Trez, or to both. It's tough because normally when the ball handler has a clear advantage, you want to commit to the ball handler because your other guy, Evan, is taken out of the play. But in this case, you also have to know the personnel you're facing, right? Raul is not the biggest interior scoring threat, so you could probably play both of them instead of committing hard to the ball handler, even though he has an advantage over his defender. Instead, he chooses to commit hard to Nato as if he's like SGA or Dame or something, and Fournier just isn't athletic to catch up to a rim runner rolling very hard like Trez, and Obi's tag was non-existent. So this is what happens. Mitch ends up in the wrong position, Evan ends up in the wrong position, Obi ends up in the wrong position. You do not love to see it. All right, on to the next one. Another example of just how the center plays a large role even when the perimeter players are doing things right. AB gets around the slip. That top foot is forward. His hand is out. Mirrors him pretty well. Spencer's pretty explosive going downhill, so this is a decent job, but you already see he's gearing up for a far alley-oop pass, and Mitch is backpedaling, and he's not so nimble backpedaling, and he didn't really drop far fast enough. So it's a rough deal for the Knicks, and they just don't execute. Mitch in particular doesn't execute. The ball's in the air, and he's still on the ground. Just an example of how like you need, there's a lot of responsibilities on the center. You all likely knew that, but I just wanted to throw a clip in there just in case. All right. Let's see. This clip is another example of the importance of communication here. Here's RJ is the primary ball handler defender versus Cam. Here, he knows Cam is going to drive. He's waving Mitch up. Let me see if I can run that back real quick. Watch RJ. Come up, come up. It works out anyway, but there was a miscommunication there where he wanted Mitch to come to the level of the screen because he knew RJ knew his old teammate Cam wasn't going to pull up from midi, so he wanted to have Mitch bother Cam, who was going to have a runway to the hoop, and Mitch was more worried about Capella instead, so he stuck with Capella. It's tough to say who was right here, but you have to have that on a string. You have to be on a string, and them being on the same page, even though it was a 19-3 blowout, it's not something uncommon for the Knicks, unfortunately. All right, now I'm gonna go back to another clip that I took from Undefeated Hoops using Jrue Holiday again to talk about what's called peeling back, which is what you have to do when you're really eliminated from the play in some cases. Guys like Russell Westbrook, Dame, explosive drivers, you're just not going to catch up to them backpedaling or sidestepping half the time with the screen. So in that play, Holmes wasn't really going to crash the board hard, but guys like Trez, guys like Mitch, guys like Capella, they crash hard. So it's a really important responsibility if there ends up being a switch at the rim for the person defending the ball, defending the initial screen, to take the roller and try to take them out of the play. So let's watch what happens here. Swing, swing, swing. See EF going around a Trez screen. Gets around pretty nimbly. You see that inside foot, which isn't the quickest way to get around the screen like we just talked about. But he manages to stick with them. Sims is right here. Is this a floater? Is this a pass? I don't know. You see Evan box it out and try to get the pass, but you got to be more physical than that when you're defending the center. Otherwise, they're just going to grab it over the top. Fortunately, Sims comes and switches and has his back, but in a scramble situation, this isn't just unique to pick and roll defense. You have to figure out where the hole is and who doesn't have who and pick someone up. Here, you see one person cutting and then Kuz cutting here. Julius is on someone. Evan doesn't know who he has. You see Kuz creeping. Julius is focusing on him. Evan's here, no resistance. Kuz is damn near 7 feet tall. So, that's probably where the Knicks defense is always at its worst, is when things are less scripted. You think about our transition defense and long series of rotations and stuff like that. We just don't have guys who read the game very quickly. It's that stuff like that seems like an effort thing, but to me, I really don't think that's like a lack of effort per se on Evan's part. I think it's a lack of knowing what the hell to do, which is just as damning, if not more, in my opinion. All right. This isn't pick and roll defense, but this kind of illustrates the same thing regarding Evan. He's out of the play completely here, blow by. This is the stuff that was pissing people off, right? When it's just no resistance to Dinwiddie. And you're not affecting Dinwiddie here. So what are you doing? Now you look at him like more high level feel guys on defense would have already been on their way toward him. Every team has guys who can hit that corner three. So if you're coming out from the top, from a blow by at the top, the first place you should look is the corners, because that's who's likely going to be open. All right. So we've been beating up on Evan. We've been beating up on the Knicks in general with clips from the Wizards game. The Hawks game was a little more fun. It ended up being closer, but the Knicks lead ended up going from 20 to 10 to 5 to back to 10 to 15. And they generally played really well on both ends. And part of that is because guys were executing on defense. Part of that is because the Hawks obviously didn't have Trae Young. So, say what you want about the Wizards. I know they're kind of a mess right now, but Neto and Dinwiddie are much, much more deadly pick and roll operators than, DeLon Wright and Cam Reddish. Both of who are fine players, but that's just not their bread and butter. So let's take a look at a few clips from the Hawks game where the Knicks turned the corner. Here, Evan on DeLon Wright again. Capella. Capella is a much better screener than the guys on the Wizards. I'll say that. So he gets around him. You see Evan's feet trying to get around. Outside foot, inside foot. You want to see that outside foot a little bit further up. Evan's technique could get a little bit better, but you also see him using his hands to try to slow both Capella and DeLon, which is good. Hand on DeLon's hip, which is good. DeLon's not really as much of a drive threat, and he also has some great help from RJ here. So all around great team defense. Let's look at this clip here. Evan and Mitch again. Combo you'll often see opposing defenses target. This time they go under, which is something they were doing a lot versus DeLon and Skylar Mays. He's shooting like 40% from three, but on his career, he's really mid, like 35, 36%. So, he hit a couple of threes in this game that were open, but he's probably someone the Knicks aren't too worried about. Rescreen, which is common for non-shooters or lesser shooters, I should say. Here, Evan gets hit, tries to get that top foot over, hands on the ball handler. Now, watch, gets back around him. against guys who don't drive as hard off of the screen, you have a better chance. Even guys like Evan, who are bigger and slower, have a better chance to recover onto them. You know you have help here. That's trust right there between Evan and Mitch, and that's what you love to see. Here, you couldn't really see it. It was the very beginning of the clip. Let me run that back. He gets hit hard by a Collins screen. Again, inside foot, not the best technique, but hands out, which is good. Again, Delon is using that pick, but he's not really a threat to drive hard, so Evan can get back into it. Good dig here. It's good stuff. Which one is this? Let's see. Here's another clip from the Wiz. I don't really remember why I included this one, to be honest. So, you know, Raul Neto was hitting some tough shots, and that was one of them. I was a lot less mad about this game than others, even though there was a lot of defensive brain farts. All right, back to the Hawks game. Let's look at RJ here. Gets around the slip, hand up to block the outlets, stays on his hip. Here, you know, we talked a little bit earlier about communication. This is why this Knicks team needs extra communication on their defense, even more than most other teams defending the pick and roll. You see RJ getting around, you see Mitch dropping, but what is unique is how much help defense this Knicks team provides. This is Tibbs' scheme, right? Most guys wouldn't necessarily have Kemba here. They would trust RJ to get back in front of him, back in front of Bojan, like we saw Jrue do in the clip, or for Mitch to take him and RJ to box out Capella. But with this Knicks scheme, with Tibbs' scheme, you'll see help from Evan and Julius, but particularly from a player, in this case, Kemba, who's all the way 1-2 feet in the paint, leaving Evan the responsibility to handle these two guys. And then whoever Evan doesn't take, Kemba then has to rotate to. So that, look at that. Look how deep in the paint he is. So that's a lot more pressure for these guys in terms of defensive execution off ball. Evan is a little out of position. He should be closer to the middle. Stunts toward him. It's a dicey maneuver to fake because he could have just faked the pass and then shot it for himself. But he's not Delon. I think he's not as quite, again, he's not super confident as a shooter. Cam is. Cam passes it back though, and both Evan and Kemba end up on Cam, and they get burned for it. So that's why you see, I think, in my opinion, some more defensive miscues versus the when the Knicks are defending the pick and roll, because this scheme, it relies on overhelping, and a lot for our guys. What that results in is miscommunications on scrambling, and then also sometimes guys just habitually overhelp when they don't need to. So, you know, sometimes I do wonder if the Knicks should rely more on their ball handling defenders, especially when they have RJ and Julius on the floor, and on Mitch. But unfortunately, each of those three guys has given Tibbs reason to question the reliability of their own defense. So on the other hand, I can see why Tibbs just decides on forcing extra passes like that and having extra help defense and daring guys like Delon Wright to hit the three. The fact of the matter is, it's just tough in this league nowadays where so many people can shoot. Delon's not a bad shooter by any means, and he's one of the worst shooters you'll find at the guard spot. So here you see Evan. John Collins slips. Evan outside foot, perfect technique here. Hand up, perfect technique. Stays with them. Great rear view contest. And that's where we end, right? Evan can do this stuff. So can the Knicks. It's just a matter of consistency and execution. And in Evan's case, physicality, really. You have to be comfortable getting into guys' bodies and putting hands on them, and then once the second part of the play is enacted, you have to be ready to move to somebody else often. So I suspect you'll see the Knicks get better at it as the season goes on. I know we're 30 games in, and a lot of us are kind of over it, but I think guys getting healthy and guys getting back and guys getting in shape, in the case of Mitch and in Mitch in particular, I think I don't think this is going to be a top 5 defense anymore, but I don't think it's going to be a 22nd or 23rd ranked defense like we've seen. So hopefully you learned a little bit here about screen defense and the finer points. And next time you watch our bros, you can pay attention to how high they are when they get around the screen, and where their outside and inside feet are, and where their hands are, and whether they have to peel back or not. And you'll be able to talk about all this cool nerdy stuff with your friends who couldn't care less about it. On that note, it's your boy Prez signing off. Hope you enjoyed this video.